Zacky Vengeance's guitar style to Synyster Gates? How are they as guitar players in comparison to each other?
I think they're at the other total ends of the spectrum. Like, Brian is so technical and precise, and he does have great groove, and Zacky has such great groove, but has like a cool, like, for lack of a better word, like a cool punk rock kind of sloppy feel, right? Like it's kind of like in the great, like, two guitar bands, it's like Izzy Stradlin and Slash, right? Like Izzy had this cool punk rock kind of slimy vibe to it. And Brian had a very kind of precise technical thing. So I thought they complemented each other really, really well. Like this kind of weird, dangerous punk thing that you didn't quite trust, and then, a real clear precision out of Brian. So I thought they really, it was cool in that respect, because you had two flavors to choose from.
So having worked with them on Waking the Fallen at first and then several records later, did they progress as guitar players, like from your perspective, over the course of time?
Oh yeah, for sure. For sure. I know Brian like got really into like jazz stuff, and then, on top of it, not only did they like progress more as guitar players, but they progressed more in like sonically and technically what they wanted out of their guitar and what worked for them. Right. And it was almost like, when I worked with them, it was almost a progression towards simplicity. It was almost like a de-evolution of like equipment. It became more and more just plugging in straight to an amplifier. Maybe a clean part would have a compressor pedal, but earlier it was like we were, doing several different guitar heads blended into one track, which was usually a couple blends of different Bogner amps, like the Uberschall, and we had these custom made amps that Reinhold Bogner made us, called the Caveman. And there was like maybe 3 of those. One didn't belong to us, and then we owned the other 2. So, and then as we went into City of Evil, we kept that formula a little bit, took some pedals away. And then I remember on Self-Titled, it was very much like guitar into amplifier, one microphone, so it wasn't a blending, and it wasn't like multiple microphones. It was very much straightforward. And then it's funny because now I think their setup maybe has evolved into, using fractals, and, the technology has grown so much, but not only did they grow as players, but like equipment wise. And same thing with Johnny. Johnny was always like, we were messing around with how to incorporate bass distortion into a regular bass sound, and splitting cabinets. So one part of like if you had an 810 cabinet, the top part might go through a guitar amp and the bottom part might go through a Gallon-Kruger amp. And I think he made a signature bass guitar that actually had a guitar pickup built into it. So they were always kind of like chasing stuff and not really necessarily having especially when I was working with them. And, and the same thing, like Brian messing around with different pickups, right? Like he was going through sustainer pickups and Dimebag played the Dimebucker pickup into an Invader. So he was experimenting a lot with his setup too. And even, I think he might have even experimented a little bit more with non-Floyd Rose stuff too, like towards the end there. So
I've seen Avenged Sevenfold once live, and there was a lot of trade-off guitar parts between Synyster Gates and Zacky Vengeance. So when you were recording them, because listening to that record, there's a lot of parts where it feels like there's a double guitar track. Did you record, for example, Synyster Gates twice, or did you record each of them once and then layer their guitar parts together? Like, how did that work exactly?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And so how we approached that was, and this was kind of new to the guys as well, like going back to that idea of like, this is how we made records, and we had a factory and we had a protocol of how we made records. Our rule of thumb always was, when we were dealing with 2 guitar bands, was trying to understand who was there a rhythm guy? Was there a lead guy? Understanding like what roles they played in the guitar department, as it were. So our rule of thumb was, whoever played rhythm doubled their rhythm. So if Brian played rhythm, I would want Brian to double his part, just due to the fact that the way someone doubles, and especially if you're really going for accuracy and you don't want to push and pull between the left and right speaker, it's always better to have the person double himself, because if you get another player double it, it's always a reinterpretation of it. And even they can play the exact same rhythm. There's sometimes a push and pull, and sometimes you want that. Like the extreme of it would be like, a Rolling Stones, whether it's a Smallwood and a Richards, or, Richards and Brian is like, that interplay was really interesting in the band. But when you start getting into metal bands where it's like, you want that like tight rhythm. So for us, I think our rule of thumb is like, if you played the rhythm, you doubled it. On the dueling leads, sometimes we had Brian play one side and sometimes we had Zacky play the other, and it had that. Sometimes we would have Brian double himself. So we were trying to figure out what was going on with them too. So that's such a great question. So basically to answer it is a little bit of both, but I think with rhythms, it was always, if somebody played the rhythm, whether it was Brian or Zach, they doubled that. And I think Brian probably played more rhythms, and then Zacky played more. If there was a triple guitar that we wanted a little bit looser, because he had such a cool punk rock feel, we would put Zacky on top of it. And then we would also, if Zacky had like the double lead part, one side would be him. It would usually be the right side would be him through a different Marshall amp or something a little bit different to give it a little bit more spread too. So that was also the other trick, is we would try to switch up guitars or amps on the double to give it a little bit of a different flavor. So even if the same player is playing the same part, we would maybe ask him to use a different guitar, or we would use a different amp setup to kind of give it a little bit different coloration. That was one of our things that we always kind of did.
Hey, that's cool. And so, personality-wise, are they different or are they similar? Synyster Gates and Zacky?
They're different enough, they're different enough guys. Zacky has a wicked sense of humor that's pretty dry, and Brian is pretty focused, and they all have great senses of humor. So I think every guy in that band, their personality kind of like complements each other for the greater good. They're not like, everyone kind of knows their role as well. And I think that adds to a successful band.
Thanks for watching, guys. If you like what you see, make sure to subscribe for more. All the videos on this channel are original. I'm the one conducting all the interviews and editing all the videos together. So if you guys like what you see and you want to support, the best way to do so is honestly just to subscribe. Lots more to come.